Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to have you meet Malumir Logan. And let me tell you about Malumir. She is a seasoned leader with 2 decades of experience in strategic and operational expertise, a published author in public sector innovation, and is also a small business owner, certified master practitioner in neuro-linguistic techniques, and university adjunct professor teaching master-level leadership and career skill courses. She is driven by the belief that exemplary, people-oriented leadership and practical, high-performing efficiency go hand in hand. She takes pride in delivering effective leadership with this ethos. She has also practiced her belief in making well-rounded contributions to society, finding other ways to make positive differences in the world through 25 years of volunteering with charitable organizations. Yay, you. Continuing learning and developing and speaking on leadership panels, mentoring dozens of new professionals and students every year, and undertaking research on policy innovation for a National Policy Institute. I can't talk this morning. She describes herself as an anti-oppressive, trauma-informed leader, system thinker, writer of creative nonfiction, poetry, blog posts, and short stories, tarot creatrix. You have to tell me about that. Reiki master, intersectional woman, and she is looking to inspire expansiveness for the systematically excluded. So many good points right there. Today, we're going to talk about an interesting title: The Good, the Evil, and the Necessary. Power and Leadership. You know, we love to talk about leadership here. So please join me in welcoming Malumir Logan. Malumir, such an impressive background. When I first read about you, I thought, oh, I have to have her on my show. Have to.
Thank you so much for having me, Vicki.
So welcome. And as always, we start with 2 easy questions. And you're one of the few people that did not give it away in their bio. So please tell us, where do you call home? Where do you live?
I live in Eastern Ontario in Canada.
Awesome. Alrighty,
Yeah.
we love Ontario. I spent lots of time there launching the UPS store.
Wonderful. Yes, we have quite the range of weather
Yes.
here. We get the extremes from the 40 Celsius plus with humidity in the summer to ice storms and lots of snow in the winter. And you know what? I embrace it all.
And Lake Ontario is not too bad to look at either.
It's beautiful.
I used to travel to Buffalo, drive across the border, and then just follow the Lake Ontario all the way to Ontario, where I was meeting people for my job all the time. So love it up there. And that was the first
Absolutely
time
love
I ever
it.
was introduced to ice wine.
Oh, yes. Ice wine is lovely. I haven't had any in a very long time, but it is really delightful.
Sweet as could be, but also good. All right. I gave a lot of your accolades of what you've done in the past academically, but we all know that it is more than just our academics that really have taken us on our journey. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about your backstory of the past and the twists and the turns that you've taken on your journey that led you to be the person you are today.
Yes, and I think that is such an important question because I did not have an easy start to life, and that directly affected my um, ability and access to education and career options.
Mm.
Okay. And so it has been a very winding journey. In an effort to keep things nice and concise, I will say that when I first started my, full-time grown-up career, I was working multiple frontline customer service roles, primarily living below the poverty line, just trying to pay bills and live life, while I also really sought answers that I knew had to be there. And I didn't realize it yet, but I was also seeking my own internal healing, which I actually think that I actually think it's very important for leaders. The more that we become self-aware and the more that we work on ourselves, the better that we become as leaders and the more effective. I'll get to that in a bit. But I really just kept pushing toward a future that I knew had to be a better fit for me. It had to be better for me in some way. I put myself through a college diploma in a completely different field in makeup of all things, because I thought maybe I wanted to be a makeup artist. I really enjoyed it.
Who doesn't
And
as a young girl?
right, right. Well, and I mean, even now, I still love it. I
Me
still love
too.
it. You can take me out of being a makeup artist, but you can't take the love of the artistry out of me. And I did that for a short while, but then again, it was one of those experiences of this doesn't pay me very much because I wasn't in a union. It was very hard to get into the union. The hours were horrible. And I realized, okay, again, this isn't quite the right fit. And the whole reason I went to school was to try to get myself ahead, and I'm no better ahead. And so I got a job as an administrative coordinator because I had a lot of experience in admin at that point, for a publisher downtown Toronto. I worked there for a short time. And then that's when I really had the time and space to do the thinking of, I just don't have the qualifications that I need to get myself
Want
where
to
I want to
be.
be. And I don't know exactly what that is, but it's not this. So I did a lot of research. I spoke with a lot of people, and I was very, very fortunate to get the opportunity to go to university. And I will say it felt so unlikely. It felt so unlikely. And I share this little story because I think sometimes we can think to ourselves, whether we are it's someone who's an aspiring leader or someone who is in a leadership role in a very difficult situation,
Mm.
sometimes we can think, can I even aspire to something being better?
Yeah.
Can I even dream big? Is that realistic? And I'm as pragmatic as the next person. But what happened was that I went to an information session that the university was holding in the School of Urban and Regional Planning, and I really wanted to get into this program. And I was a few years older than most of the folks sitting around the table, and they were going on about, well, my uncle is, worked in planning for 2 decades, and my father is an engineer, and my mother has, and all these people, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have any of this. And so I asked the program director a very straightforward question, because a lot of the others, prospective students were asking questions that were intended to sound smart, whereas I had an actual question that I really just wanted to ask. And again, leaders ask questions.
That's right.
I said, here's the thing. I don't have a fancy background. I have a college diploma in makeup. I currently work at a magazine, and none of my family has ever worked in urban and regional planning. Do I even have a chance of getting into this program? All the other prospective students were snickering at this question. The program director had a very serious look on his face, and he said, actually, what we value in planning is interdisciplinary thinking and are people who can think about issues from a variety of perspectives. So yes, you have just as much chance as the next person. And by the way, I didn't see any of the snickering students in the program once I got in. But,
That's telling.
it was from there that I got into public service and realized how much because I really care deeply about people. That is my underlying motivating force. And so I got into public service and built my career from there, while I also continued to because I've been volunteering the whole time and continued to volunteer and provide leadership through volunteer organizations as well.
Good.
So that is, believe it or not, that's the short version.
Yeah, we have a lot in common. The volunteering I have always found so enlightening, if you will. I come from a background where I didn't even think I was going to ever go to college. And so what I found that was so wonderful and refreshing when I volunteered, and I volunteered hundreds of hours every year, was that I was exposed to people of all levels, of all walks of life, all diversity, and they shared with me everything that they knew. And it just taught me so much that I always, even when I interviewed people to work for me, I looked down at the very bottom of that that sometimes even forgotten area of, what is your volunteer efforts. I think it's so, so very important.
I think it also allows us to become more well-rounded, because I think especially as folks, and I work with so many people who are early career, who they get so focused on the job, and that's great, absolutely, throw that energy into that, build something amazing. And also it can also create a bit of narrow thinking sometimes, and it's not intentional. It's just that we're so focused on that one thing that it can be quite easy to lose sight of other skills and other worlds and other realities. Whereas when we are volunteering, and it doesn't even matter, I think, in what capacity or what kind of organization, because there's so many different kinds of organizations, it's really just about helping us to remain curious and remain open, remain learning, and to have a wider variety of experiences.
Right. And also, it exposes you to all different income levels. And sometimes we attach lots of money to happiness, and yet you are exposed to people that have no real income per se, and they're happy. And so I always thought that was just a great perspective. I didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I never was unhappy about it.
And it's funny because I've worked for a very broad range of organizations, nonprofit organizations, and I've worked in programs that were related to restorative justice, where frequently the clients coming in, had grown up in very challenging circumstances, financially. And then I also did some youth work that involved working with young people who had actually grown up in quite affluent, stable environments, who actually had frequently just as many challenges as folks in other circumstances. And so I think you're right. It's very eye-opening, where you see that actually we're all people and we're all dealing with lots of the same kinds of challenges. And yes, those circumstances can absolutely have very meaningful and negative impacts. We do in fact need to have our basic needs met, but that we're all people dealing with a wide range of challenges, and it's how are we approaching that? How are we accessing supports? How are we bettering ourselves? How are we growing?
Yeah. So you call yourself an anti-oppressive leader. What does that mean? And what does it look like in real life?
Yeah. So it's something I take quite seriously. So I'll just back up for a moment so I can provide context of what I mean by that. It's the idea that we are surrounded by and in systems, right? That's just how the world works. And this is good, right? We can't have chaos. We need structure, right? Let's not be reinventing wheels, because if we didn't have systems, we wouldn't have even gotten to where we are. We would be reinventing wheels, right? So we exist in systems. And the thing about systems is that they inherently hold a lot of the assumptions and beliefs that we have at the time that the system is created. And it's not necessarily purposeful. It's just that when people are setting things up, they tend to be setting them up from their own perspective. And what this can mean is that there are systemic realities that inadvertently and sometimes intentionally in the past have gotten built into systems that negatively affect people who are othered. What do I mean by othered? People who for whom the systems really were not
Made for.
didn't have in mind when they were created,
Sure.
right? So for example, I'm an ambiguously racialized woman. Um, and I have multiple neurodivergence, and I'm also living with disability. So I've got a few identities there
Thanks.
that can make me other. Now I also have some advantages that other people do not have, and I recognize that. So what does it mean when I say I'm an anti-oppressive leader? What I recognize is that when systems have created these, I like to call them serrated edges, that, lots of people never encounter because, the system might have been more accessible to them. But for those of us who run up against um, those those actually act as oppression. They act as barriers. They act as things that kind of hold people back and hold people down. And all the research is there. People can look this all up. All the research is there. But I think that what leadership is really about is about being a wise steward of whatever power and authority we have. We don't have to be the CEO. We don't have to be at the very top. At literally every level, we have some span of power and authority. And how are we using that to contribute to making the systems just a little bit better, a little bit fairer, a little more open, a little more accessible, so that we can actually include everyone? Because you know what? Again, the studies are there to show that, wow, when you actually open things up, you actually allow for way more capacity and ability and resources, and people collaborate better, and they're so high performing. And I know this also from personal experience because I've done it. I've done it.
There was I had done a project or led a project where we were changing our development system for our company. And it was to really start to introduce more awareness of inclusion and diversity and all those things. And there was a graphic that we shared that was really impactful to me. And it was just people of all different sizes, some in wheelchairs, some, just short people, tall people, whatever, looking over a fence was the first graphic. And the fence was a solid fence. And so only the very tall people could offer their perspective of what they were seeing, because no one else was given that opportunity to see. So then they had shortened the fence, but then still it was limited in the opportunity for people to deliver and give their perspective. And so finally they removed the fence, and then everyone was able to contribute, and the richness of what was delivered was so wonderful. And so I think that's what, as leaders, what we have to remember is that every person has a voice. Every person has an opportunity to share their thoughts and be respected for what they feel and what they think. But they need to have that opportunity to look over the fence and share that and not be excluded.
And they also need the kind of environment that actually allows them to flourish, that allows all of us to flourish. Because, sometimes there's this idea that, well, it's all about the hiring. As long as you can hire, if your hiring processes are good and you get the diverse talent in, then you're good. Well, actually, no, you're not quite set. Like, yes, that's good. Do that work. But also, what kind of environment has been created for people once they are in the organization? And because, it's funny, I think a while ago I attended, it was a leadership development day that was being done at my work. And a consultant came in and they said, okay, so I just want to be clear, this is a safe space and blah, blah, blah. And I actually thought to myself, actually, no, that's not quite how it works. Because, as a leader, I can have all the intention of creating a psychologically safe space for my team.
Mm-hmm.
And I do. But I don't actually get to decide whether or not I have achieved that safety.
Yeah.
It's each team member who gets to decide whether or not it's safe. And so the reason I say that is that, as much as we can remove the fence, and that's awesome, how are then people being engaged and supported and having their needs met in order to more fully be able to flourish and collaborate and to bring all of that value, in a way, as you said, that is genuinely respected and valued.
And I really think that's where in the last decade we've kind of got it wrong, where, maybe we were so budget focused on the financial piece of it that we forgot the importance of, as you said, I can hire all the great people in the world. I can hire the people that have that resume that looks to be great, but we're bringing them in with a skill set, but for the company to grow, to be able to scale, and for them to feel fulfilled in their job, we need to provide that support and the education, the continual opportunity for them to push outside of their comfort zone and have the support to get through that. And then, and it never stops. I mean, once you reach that plateau, then you need the support again and the education and the training to get to the next level and to the next level.
And the championship. I would
Yes,
also add in and the
absolutely.
championship. Yes.
And knowing that person as an individual may need more support than the other person in the room or people in the room. And you have to be flexible enough to give that different varying support. It isn't one size fits all, but you have to be able to get to know your people more, to be able to provide them what they need personally to grow, and have that open conversation and actively listen to them to truly understand what is it that you need and how can I help you as your leader to get there. I just don't see that we're getting that. And that's why I retired and now do this, what I do. And I'm sure that's why you do what you do, but please chat on that a little bit.
Absolutely. I think that to me, it comes down to ethical leadership because it's not just, it's never, ever just about the bottom line. And the fact is, we can see businesses are already making decisions that are not actually about the bottom line and that actually are about something else. We can leave the something else for another day, but they're about what else is happening in leaders' decision-making processes. And I think, coming back to the title for this episode, I think it really does come down to power and the disproportionate influence that leaders have. And here's the thing: is there's nothing wrong with power. Power exists. It's actually neutral. If you think about it, it's just like electricity. It exists whether or not you're using it. And it's also neutral. It's how you're using it. So the thing is, are you using it in a way that is ethical and responsible and wise? And something I always like to remind people is a choice not to use your power, or just not doing anything with it because you haven't made a decision. That's actually still a decision. A non-decision is still a decision. And so much damage can actually come when leaders are not making decisions on important pieces, or where they're just kind of taking a more laissez-faire approach. And the reason is that as a leader, you're still responsible for what you are creating on a team. And even if you are not intentionally trying to create a particular work environment in your across your teams or your divisions, your departments, whatever level you're at, even if you don't think you're actively creating an environment, you're always creating an environment, right? Because and you have disproportionate impact because you have that formal authority over decisions and over how people spend their time and resources and the decisions that other people make. And so that is very it can sometimes be easy to unintentionally twist into decisions that become unethical for people. And so this is why it comes back to, I talk a lot about making ecological decisions as leaders. What I mean by that, it's not about the environment, but it's about the idea of, we think of an ecosystem, it's got all different plants and
Mhm.
trees and bugs and insects and soil. And I don't know, I'm not an ecological scientist or anything, but it's the idea of that whole system. And as a leader, are you making a decision that is beneficial for you and your teams and the organization, both now and in the future?
Yeah.
That to me is an ecological decision, because you're thinking not just about the now, you're thinking long term, you're thinking about the whole system. And does that take more effort at first? Sure it does. But you know what? So does learning to walk. And we all have things that we have to learn in life, and these are all skills that people can learn. And so that I really believe strongly in leaders taking the responsibility to be accountable with the stewardship of whatever
Mhm.
level of power or authority they have.
So, what advice are you giving to the young people that you're talking to that are aspiring to be leaders today in this ever-changing world that we have right now?
I talk a lot about that concept of ecological
Mhm.
leadership. I also stress the importance of self-awareness,
Yeah.
because I think it's wonderful for people to be ambitious. Yes, be ambitious, go after those goals, regardless of, what your personal goals are. Um, but build that self-awareness and continue to work on yourself, because um, the more that we work on our own stuff, the better quality decisions that we make on our own lives. And then the better quality decisions we make in and for our organizations. So that's one key piece of advice. The other key piece of advice that I offer to younger people is to get them to think actively about, is leadership actually what you want? And I'm not
Mm.
saying that you shouldn't pursue it, but think about, what is it that you genuinely enjoy? What do you actually want? Because if it is about status and prestige, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, right? We all have different goals, but don't go after leadership if that is your only
Mm.
goal, because what about all the people stuff? Right? It's very important to think about those realities and the impact that you could be having. And so I always recommend to people, be very self-aware and continue to assess within yourself, what are my actual goals? What do I genuinely actually want? And allow yourself to explore whether or not that encompasses leadership.
Awesome. Well, it is time now for us to share my screen. We'll definitely have to have Malumir back because there's so much more that we can talk about. Um, but for those of you that have enjoyed this conversation and really would like to connect, I'm going to share my screen with her contact information. If you're just listening, quick go grab a paper pencil to write down the website. Of course, it all will be able to be found on my findyourleadershipconfidence.com or my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling. So please subscribe to that. So her website is simply acornandburdock.ca. That's acornandburdock.ca. She can be found on LinkedIn with her name. So that's Malumir -R Logan. So Malumir R Logan. And I'm going to let Malumir talk to you about what you'll find when you go to her website, any resources she has out there, as well as what she's putting out on LinkedIn. So it's all yours, Malumir.
Thank you so much. Yes, on my website you'll find it's quite a dynamic space. I talk about a lot of different content there because, as Vicki mentioned in my introduction, I do a variety of things. I've never been able to do just one thing. And so you'll find all sorts of empowering blog posts on personal development, spiritual development. I do also talk a great deal on there about leadership and career. So you can find all of that there. And then on LinkedIn, I regularly post content that is very focused on the kinds of topics that we've been discussing today, very focused on ethical, high quality leadership. And I'm always so happy to connect with people there.
Awesome. Well, it has been just so great chatting with you. You have so many wonderful points and really great advice for the audience. So hopefully the audience will re-listen to this a few times to make sure that it sinks into all the things that she's given you. As always, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you so much for having me, Vicki. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Awesome. As always, I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.